Greetings and salutations, everyone! My name is Fire Mage, and welcome back to Rimworld Ascension Take 2, Episode 61. If you enjoy this episode, please remember to like and subscribe, and as always, mod list is down in the description. And with that, let's get on to the episode. Alright, picking up where we left off last time, what are my plans for today? Well, as I stated last time, we are completely out of components. So that is going to be our primary goal today, using our long-range scanner to find some components, and then going and mining them. That way we can actually get to work on all of our projects. In the meantime, though, our constructors will continue work on upgrading our wall down here, and of course upgrading the size of the armory. And perhaps, if I'm feeling up to it later, we may even go and launch another attack. Probably not, seeing as our rocket artillery is borderline out of ammo, and I don't want to risk attacking a settlement without ammunition, but it is something we may have to consider doing. But in the meantime, simply working on our few constructions will have to suffice. And there we go. We have found our component pile. Let's go see where it is. Alright, it's pretty far away, all things considered, which isn't ideal, but we do have one. And I cannot abandon that because I need components. We can't build anything right now. So let's go ahead, grab our 2 mules, make sure we load up the mining squad of Bicep and Wiggy. And then we will send Reaper along in the other one. Actually, before we do that, I'm also going to send whoever is the highest plants expert in the colony, which is White. That way, we can chop some trees down while we're over there. Alright, there we go. That's more like it. And then we just load up all the cheese so they have something to eat while we're there. And that should be everything we need to bring with us. And it will take us 1.6 days, so cut that in half. Should only take a little bit under a day to get there. And once they go and mine those components, we should be able to actually begin work on some of our projects. First thing we're going to do is we are going to build a cargo transport pod, and we are going to mine some asteroids, because I have been getting some alerts for them, and there's a lot of good resources up there we could use. Of course, if we're going to space, we're also going to need to make a space suit, which is going to be apparently super expensive. But we can afford to make 1 space suit. We can almost make 2, but right now we can only make 1. We just need a few more advanced components, so hopefully we get a trader for that soon. Ah, and it would seem we have managed to convert Ra to our ideology. Now, what was Ra good at? Ra is good at combat. Well, now that they've been converted, let's get to recruiting. And it seems like Ra is probably going to get shoved into a war casket. Simply because they're only good at combat. And it wouldn't hurt to have a 3rd war casket, if we're being entirely honest here. They do work quite well, as we have seen on multiple occasions. And it would seem that the Pact of Verbonlia has made the harrowing journey to send us a combat supplier, which is the exact kind of trader we need to hopefully offload the ridiculous amount of sniper rifles we have. Alright, let's see what we can buy from this trader. First things first, medicine. Wonderful. 12 medicine. Not a lot, but it will do. We will buy some industrial ammo. We're running a little bit low on the stuff. And will they buy our weapons? The answer is yes, they will. Well, if we sell them all of our sniper rifles, we get a total of 1,712 silver, but they only have 1,130. So, while we could buy less, instead what I think I want to do is I want to buy this autocannon. Now, this one is a little different than the War Casket Auto Rifle, which is a short barrel autocannon to be wielded by a War Casket, whereas this is meant to be wielded by a normal person in power armor, but it's still a full-size autocannon. So we'll buy that, and we'll do a little bit of testing with that, see if it's a worthwhile trade-off. And that gets us to just below how much they have. So we'll go ahead, offload some melee weapons, and that gets us to 3 silver over their total, which I am willing to lose, because that's not too terribly much of a loss. And our mining caravan has arrived. Alright, and it appears to be snowing on this map. Very interesting. But that is not a concern to us. Let's go ahead, unload all of our pawns, set that component pile to be mined, and then set this entire section of the forest to be removed. Well, while our little mining and lumberjacking team is doing what they are doing over there, let's go ahead and test out this War Casket autocannon, and we will be comparing it to the auto rifle, the slug thrower, and of course the current charge blaster. We will compare their range and their damage. Accuracy isn't really something I'm too terribly concerned about. Mostly just range and damage. So let's see. First off, the Charge Blaster does 8 damage with a range of 32 and a burst shot of 24. Not too bad. The Auto Rifle, on the other hand, has a damage of 22, a burst shot of 3, and a range of 29. So a little bit less range, significantly less shots, but each bullet does much more damage. Good to know. Then the Slug Thrower, which is the ludicrously sized shotgun. 30 damage per shot, 4 shots, but only a range of 19. This would be really good if we did the helicopter insertion strategy, which is potentially a good idea. And then finally, the auto cannon does 27 damage, 7 shots, and 33 range. And it's pretty accurate too, which is a nice bonus. Now, the only downside to the autocannon is it can't fire in this little circle around it, just like a normal autocannon. Which is slightly bad, but if I use my war caskets in tandem with my normal infantry, should be fine. Probably. So I think for now, we will keep it equipped, and we will put it through some combat trials to see if it is a viable replacement. If it is not, no big deal. Not much money wasted. And another one of our animals has died to malnutrition. Unfortunate. And it would seem that our armory upgrades have been completed. Or at the very least, the structure upgrade has been completed. And now, we are going to very carefully reinstall all of the armor racks, like so. And eventually we'll need to build some more armor racks in here, but for now, simply placing the ones we already have will have to suffice. And then we will have all this extra space here to put more weapon cabinets and weapon racks, because we do need to store quite a few weapons after every raid until we can sell them. Well, it would also seem that our constructors have finished the armored portion of the southern river wall. Pretty good, if I do say so myself, but in doing so, they have used up all of our reinforced concrete. which means we are going to need to fire back up the old concrete mixers and get them working on that once more. But while we wait for it to be made, let's go ahead and set up the next section, which will be this little bit right here. Like so. And we won't bother doing this section since I'm probably going to extend the wall down a little bit more in the future. But for now, reinforcing this small section will do nicely. And it would seem that the Petrogede Raptors on our map have decided to go Manhunter. Well, nothing our turrets shouldn't be able to handle. And while we're over here looking at the turrets, it would seem that the anti-tank gun has been deconstructed finally. And if you will remember the reason I wanted to do that, it was because I wanted to build a heavy flat cannon. Do we really still need one? Probably not. Admittedly, we have a lot of other weapons that are still really good. But even that heavy anti-air and even the heavy anti-tank still can't fully penetrate our war caskets. Granted, we have 7th generation war caskets, so we have the fancy ones, but those heavy anti-tank weapons only have an armor penetration of 140%. Our war caskets have 200% armor against sharp attack, which is what they do. So they can't even penetrate the fancy war caskets we use. But luckily, the enemy does not usually field the fancy ones, only the lower tier war caskets, which should be susceptible to heavy anti-tank weapons. And there we go. German has finished the spacesuit helmet, which means we now have the ability to go to space and do space things. I'm hoping we can just land on the asteroid and we don't need to do anything fancy with it, but we will have to wait and see. Of course, I would prefer to send any space team up together in a team of 2, but unfortunately, we don't have the advanced components for that. We only have 3 advanced components, and we need, I believe, 4 just for the spacesuit armor, and then 1 for the helmet. So, we are 2 short, unfortunately. Hopefully, we can buy some more soon. And our caravan has returned successful. And we managed to get a decent bit of wood out of that little mining trip. Not as much as I would have liked, but considering that trees straight up do not grow anymore, I will take what I can get when it comes to wood. And that should hopefully let us finish off the bridges for the Western expansion and hopefully get a little bit of chem fuel going. But speaking of using our wood, there is another project I want to do. Now, if you will recall, during the big battle, our bridge over here got pretty shot up, which isn't ideal. Now, the reason it took so much damage was because of the fire from our rocket artillery. But you know what doesn't burn? Concrete bridges. So we are going to go ahead and replace all of these with the reinforced concrete. Now, it will be a little bit expensive, I will admit, but I think it will be well worth it. And eventually we will change the whole bridge to reinforced concrete bridges, but for now, a handful just where it took damage will do just fine. And with those components now at the base, let's get to work on our defenses, because if you remember on our list, one of the things is revamping our frontline defense. Now, there's a few things I want to do. First of all, I want to actually make the road go through here so that it's no longer just kind of haphazardly placed, which admittedly will require us to make some slight changes to the defenses. But overall, it should be more beneficial than not. And then we'll just have it run right up here to the rich soil. Like that. Now, in terms of our new turrets I want to put up, admittedly, it's a bit of a hard choice, as I would love to put some more autocannons up, but also I would like to increase the defenses of the turrets we already have, like these mini turret bunkers, by putting up some sandbags around them. So I think that is going to be the first thing we do. We are going to be tearing out essentially this whole section of barbed wire. Not only that, but we are also going to be moving around our turrets a little bit. Of course, that will wait until the deconstruction is finished before we start doing that. But if all goes well, we should get some better defenses here. And there we go. Factory Basics is researched. Now, we can't actually do anything with Factory Basics. The things it gives us aren't useful to us yet. But we are able to now do Munition Armaments Factory. Now, the nice thing about the Chem Fuel Clarifier here is if you read here, it can use corpses. So, instead of just throwing all those human corpses into our river, as we've been doing, we can instead throw them into a hopper and convert them into fuel to power our war vehicles, which is very useful. Give them a little bit more purpose. Of course, now we have to research that, and it will take almost as long as researching Factory Basics did. You know what? I just had an idea. So I was looking over here at our defenses, and I came to the conclusion that it may be time to expand not just west, but east. Since we're revamping the frontline defenses, we might as well go all out. What do I mean by that? Well, if we toggle the fertility overlay, as you can see, there is a lot of rich soil over here. Something that we are going to need more and more of as time goes on. Now that we're researching factories as well, we will need even more space, because if we use the only factory thing we really have right now, the versatile assembler, as you can see, it is not small. So we're going to need a lot of space for all of that. So, why don't we expand over here? And I'm thinking it'll be pretty simple. We will simply build a wall extending along right here. And while we could go all the way over and down, not really ideal, as that would force us to try to fit our choke point somewhere over here. So what we will do instead, give this a nice little curve so that we don't just have a ugly straight wall like that. And we will put our choke point right here. It'll be much smaller than our current one, allowing us to focus our firepower much more intensely, which will be a pleasant bonus. And it'll make it just easier to set up and repair. Now, we will also need to expand our southern wall, which will require us to deconstruct those, and then run that up. But, you know, that'll take a while. In fact, let's put it on the list, since this is going to be a bit of a long-term project. There we go, and let's just make sure we put it up there by its brother, Expand West. And we will need to do a little bit of work over here to make sure we get it as optimized as possible. For instance, I want this mountain removed in its entirety. It is just in the way. All right, there we go. That little mountain of rock has been removed, which means we are now able to begin designing this section of the new base expansion. Let's start off by designing the river line right here so we can have a nice little visual aid. And there is this geothermal generator, which we could use, but I'm personally not too terribly interested in it. Wouldn't provide us with much benefit. I think we need to cut back this wall ever so slightly. And start by designing the defenses. Alright, so there we go. That will be the trenches themselves. A nice symmetrical shape. Perfect. Then all we have to do is run this rebar armored wall down. And while I could cut it back and make it a straight line, instead we'll make it have a little curve like so. Beautiful. And then all we have to do is set up the ridiculous amount of turrets. So we will put one turret here, and one turret right here. Need to move that wall a little bit. Those will be our perimeter defense turrets. Then we will put one more here and one more here. So we will have 4, just like we do down here, only these ones are much more concentrated in their spacing. Then, of course, the double autocannons. Here and here. I think that will work much better. And then, of course, we will be putting our heavy flat gun in here as well. Now, granted, the range benefit of it is kind of lost given the small space here. The heavy flat gun has a range of 62 tiles, and let's go ahead and just measure this. Yeah, that's only like at most 50 tiles. So I think actually we will forfeit the usage of the heavy flat gun initially, as this is going to end up being, I think, a bit more of just a stalling tactic. Now, that's not to say we won't put any heavy artillery here. We will put a quad anti-air gun, which will shred through the enemy's weak infantry. Or at least in theory it will. And then all we have to do is put up some spotlight turrets, which we will simply be reinstalling from over here to over here. And that should be able to keep any hostile forces at bay. Probably. Of course, we're not done just yet. Now it's time for the sandbags. Gotta make sure those turrets are kept safe after all, or at least the expensive ones, like the autocannons. And that should do quite nicely. And then, of course, we will be putting barbed wire up as well. And since this one is on the river here, as I do want to make sure it is fully surrounded, we will put a little bit of a bridge right there. And then, of course, the final bit of my defenses, as always, barbed wire. And unlike this one, we will only start off with a simple line around the sandbags and see how that works out. Now, obviously, this defensive network is good, but it is close to the world border, so it might fall. Hence, we will not be fully deconstructing this old one back here. It will function more so as a emergency fallback point, if you will. However, all the barbed wire will be deconstructed, as we are going to have to change it up a little bit. And you know what? Just because, I think we will also be sequestering this little section up here off from the rest of the base in a similar fashion to the residential area. Having areas able to be sectioned off is quite beneficial, as I have found. Now, we just got to make sure we don't cut into the rich soil. That would be counterproductive. A little something like that should do. And then we will put our 5 wide hole for the garage door right here. And unfortunately, we are going to have to remove the anima tree, and we're just going to chop it down. Yes, this will cause some mental problems in our colonists for a little bit, but it is a worthwhile sacrifice. Now that I'm looking at this, we could totally set up more lines of defenses just right here and have it function as a choke point. That's not a bad idea. So what if, hear me out, instead of putting the quad anti-air gun up there, we'll remove it for now, and we'll wait for everything to get built, but we could set up the human defenses back here, while the automated defenses remain up here. If this is set up to be more of an automated defensive area, which we will be leaving the trench network, that way if we are able to get to it, we can engage, with our automated defenses with us. But in case we are unable to get there, let's go ahead and set up an emergency trench network. It's not going to be too terribly much farther back from that one, but it is going to be a little bit further back. And this one will not get any turrets, at least for now, and will simply exist as it is like this. And as we do not wish to interfere with the potential farming, we will put the quad anti-air guns here, and just for the fun of it, we'll put another one right here. So we'll have 2 of those instead of turrets, so if they somehow manage to blast through all of our turrets, they then get to go through the fun of the quad anti-air guns. And we get the benefit of having all this nice farming space. And it would seem that German, while we were designing our new defenses and Eastern expansion, managed to make us 3 nuclear warheads. Very good. That gives us 3 nuclear deterrents to use as we please. Now, I'm thinking eventually we might move the field cannon up, since it can only be used on the current map in a direct fire role, cannot fire over walls and stuff. So if we were to move it up and place it, say, here, it would be able to fire pretty much all through right here, which could be useful, especially given our nuclear warheads. But I'm not too sure if I want my nukes that close, so that's kind of a risk-reward calculation we're going to have to do. For now, though, I think we will be leaving it right here. Although I might move it a little closer. I feel like it would look a little bit better if we placed it over here, like this. Alright, well, with the Eastern expansion being worked on, I think I'm going to leave this episode off here. We have made much progress. The southern wall down here has been properly reinforced, the armory upgraded, 3 nuclear bombs acquired, as well as a bunch of components, and, of course, we have begun expanding eastward as well as westward, since the west expansion is going to take so long as we have to wait on the moisture pumps to do their job. But in the meantime, this expansion will be very good. Good choke points, and more importantly, more farming area within the wall. That is nice and rich soil for as soon as the long night is over. Of course, this area, I don't have any definitive plans for it yet, but probably going to be where I put the factories. But that will wait until we have them researched. With all that said and done, though, I will see you all in the next episode.